And so, as I'm talking about this, I don't want you to get scared, but also I want to break some myths because I hear this a lot where I talk to people, and Chris, I don't know if you've heard this, where like my company is not a target.
Yep,
Um,
I'm too small, or there's bigger companies that are going to be a better target. I
yes.
mean, the way I've always thought of it is, if you're a bank robber, are you going to try to knock down Fort Knox, or are you going to hit the convenience store at the corner?
Yes, and that is it exactly. Like these are all some myths I've heard, but your point is so spot on. The threat actors, if you think of what I'll call large enterprise, Fortune 500 companies, right? Those have huge budgets to pay for security tools, for paying for um, policies. They have dedicated teams of hundreds of individuals who are there protecting those. That's your small, medium business. That's the equivalent of the corner store. And they know that potentially you don't have in place the tools, you don't have in place potentially the policies to protect yourself. And so they are looking at that, or that you believe that, hey, my next generation antivirus is enough. Or that, security is just too cumbersome. Trying to do 2FA is too hard. Um, Unfortunately, the reality is every business is a target. You just might not, qualify for that headline. And this is the unfortunate reality. I was talking to a guy I know really well in the security space based out of Louisiana, and he told me about a small trailer company they make trailers for the oil fields down in Louisiana. And so their whole thing is welding trailers. And they fell for a business email compromise where they sent off they had a payment intercepted for $500,000 that
Mm.
got stolen. And they didn't have cyber insurance. They didn't have, so they didn't have protections in place. And there was $500,000 that they were just out of luck to deal with that. It was a small, I think 10, 15 person company is what Bob told me. And the owner was like, there went my life savings. Like all the things he had worked for, it was like, I'm going to have to keep this business going longer because just lost basically all of his accumulated wealth from it. And that didn't make it onto the nightly news anywhere. Um, and that's the unfortunate part um, through it. The other thing I'll say about people who are like, oh, I don't have anything of value. Do you have employees? Because I've seen scams where they will target them and send a phishing email and try and get all the W-2s for your employees because their social security numbers. They can do some false IRS tax claims. Um, there are all sorts of things you have. And then it also becomes who are your clients become important. Whether or not you maybe have confidential information for them, or is one of your clients a target that these threat actors would like to get to in a supply chain? The story that always pops into my mind is Target. About 10 years ago, roughly, they had a massive breach that happened, and it was through a virtual private network, a VPN, that their HVAC vendor was actually compromised. And the threat actor went from the HVAC into Target and stole a bunch of credit card information. There was a small business that I guarantee you was not thinking they were big enough for a headline and ended up in the headlines from Target because of who they were. And so those are all things you need to think about your business and why protecting it is important. Uh, this one, I'm going to skip or go over just quickly on it. There's this concept of a cyber kill chain. And why this is important to understand is these are all places that, as a defense, partnering with like Xpert technology, you can try and interrupt the threat actors. Now, people say, hey, the threat actors just have to be right once. We have to be right every time as a defender. And I do agree with that to an extent. But also, if we can put in layers of security, that means we can interrupt them at these different points, and they're stopped. So there are multiple places to interrupt them, and this is why there isn't a one size fits all solution. It is all about multiple solutions become key. Um, and that defense is challenging. And so this is why I advise everybody to partner with an expert like Xpert Technologies to talk through some of these things. Like Chris, some of these things I have on here, I think you probably include in your basic services, right? You probably have asset
Mm-hmm.
inventory there. I
Yep.
mean, what are these things? I'm guessing basic IT hygiene, right? Patching, MFA, you know, you
All of
help
it.
people do. Yeah.
We do.
And so, like, it's really important because what I call these are your low hanging fruits, if you will. If you think of a tree, like asset inventory, you need to understand what you have in an environment so that you can protect them. Do all of your tool or are all of those assets protected? Do you know who all the users are? Are all the applications updated? This gets into patching because threat actors will use old vulnerabilities to attack things. I've seen threat actors out there using old vulnerabilities. There's a software solution called Veeam that's had a patch that's been out there for a year, almost a year and a half now, that we're still seeing threat actors do. Reducing your attack surface, this means making it harder to be found. When you're on the internet, you are going to be found, but there are things you can do to reduce it so that you are that smaller target or harder to get into. This is why removing old machines. Chris, I'm sure you probably had lots of conversation this past year about why people need to remove Windows 10 machines out of their environments, right?
All day long.
All day long, yes. And you maybe even have a few people who are holding on to them that you're still trying to convince them. But the reason why you want to do that is you need to reduce that attack surface. Unfortunately, there is some planned obsolescence in IT, and you need to do it. Plans, these are things like a business continuity plan, an incident response plan. These are things you want to talk through with, expert technology or somebody. So how are we going to respond when bad things happen? You want to be prepared for that. And then finally, you do need to be monitoring, detecting all of the time through these things.